Okay, Bobby, I want to take a look at a couple of swings, a couple of different views from the golf school the other day, sort of before and after videos of your swing. The picture on your left is a video of your swing shot before any instruction was given, and the video on the right is obviously after instruction. I've drawn a red box on the screen that starts down around your ankles and extends up toward the top of your top of your head. And what that box is going to do is give us sort of an indicator of where your weight distribution is at. If you'll notice the picture on the left at your setup there, predominantly most of your body center of mass is either confined within the middle of that box, or some of it, your right shoulder, right hip, right shin, is actually outside the right portion of that box, or left if you're looking at the screen. But at the picture on the right, you're going to notice a considerable difference. Number one, starting with the ground up, some of the fundamentals that we talked about, your feet being flared out, your knees being sort of externally rotated, that 55 to 60% of your weight on your front leg, handle leaning forward. You're in just such a tremendously more stable, more powerful position after the instruction and in the picture on the right. I'm going to play each of these swings for you just so you can kind of see. And here's the one on the left. Notice the club moving back, left arm going straight up, a lifting of the club at the top. When I stop you, I freeze you sort of at the top of your backswing. You'll notice just how far your weight has shifted into your trail leg. Now you have quite a bit of your body mass outside that box. The video on the right, we did a much better job of releasing the flexion of the right knee, letting the right knee straighten and the left knee flex. The left shoulder working more down and the left arm working more in. Much better position at the top of your backswing here. You can see that you've got a much more vertical spine. You're demonstrating, pretty closely demonstrating the stable axis pattern that we've talked about. If I were going to critique this position, I would say you still have a little bit of upper axis translation, which means your upper center of mass is still moving into or over your trail leg just a bit, and that's because you haven't blended enough side tilt or side bend with the shoulder rotation. I'm going to put up a picture, compare you to another player here in just a few seconds, so we'll kind of come back to that point. But overall, in a much, much better position at the top of your backswing. As we play the picture on the left and we get down closer to impact, you're going to see quite a big difference in these two impact positions. You'll notice that the picture, the video on the left, you'll see, really no lower body action there. Your knees are just sort of caving in, elbows bending and separating, a little bit of width, more width there in your elbows. Just overall, not a very powerful motion, not using the ground as a force to press against there. And not a whole lot of forward shaft lean. I would say you probably have a pretty neutral shaft here. Definitely probably more vertical, but on the picture on the right, much better job of pushing your tailbone in a linear fashion toward the target, really sliding your hips toward your target, trying to get to more of that 80 to 85% of that weight on your left leg like we talked about during the school, and you've got the handle of the golf club in a much, much better position. You've got a lot more, considerably more right hand flying wedge that we talked about, and that's that. That's that angle formed between your right arm and the shaft. Sort of right there, and you can see that that's a position of power. That's where we're hitting the golf ball with compression because we're de-lofting it, and we're not adding loft to the face of the golf club. So you take a look at these two impact positions, and there's a tremendous difference. The player on the right has much more control over his low point. He's going to stand a better chance of striking the ball before the ground time and time and time again. Still have a few more components to this golf swing to learn. Really the next step for you, Bobby, is learning to jump off the ground, learning to tuck your tailbone and extend your spine. You can see that just past impact, you start to see the left wrist break down here. That's really that sort of flipping motion that we talked about. And the biggest reason for that is because we're not jumping off the ground, we're not extending our spine, and our pivot is stalling. Our upper center of mass, our core, is not rotating. And like we talked about, centrifugal force is going to make those wrist angles dump every single time if we don't continue to turn and don't continue to jump and tuck our tailbone. A little bit better on the picture on the right, but we're still not jumping and tucking, and as a result of that, we've still got a little bit of left. Okay, Bobby, here's a comparison of your swing to longtime PGA Tour player Grant Waite, who probably demonstrates the stable axis pattern better than any player on earth at this point. I want to compare it, just kind of do a quick comparison of your swing to his. Notice the difference at setup. Although you think you have your weight forward and you have your handle forward, and it's a huge change from where you were, you can see there's still a little bit more room to go. I have drawn the same box on Grant from his ankles vertically to the top of his head, but notice how much of his body mass is outside of this box to the left. Almost his entire left leg, left shoulder, left arm is outside of that box, and that's because he has more of his lower center forward. He has his tailbone slid further forward toward the target. He doesn't have a lot of axis tilt, a lot more axis tilt, but he does have his body mass more on his left side. And this is where I want you to continue to work to try to get. Now, if I take the club back, I want you to notice his body mass will not move. It will not shift 1 ounce to the right. His head remains perfectly still inside of the box. Pretty much no going up, no dipping down. He has a very, very, very quiet motion. Let's compare the top of the backswing position of your swing to Grant's swing. You're going to notice some significant differences. First of all, the amount of his body mass that he had outside of the box at the start is still there, whereas you sort of gently swayed to the right. You'll also notice that Grant has a much more vertical spine. I could almost draw a straight line completely down, his back, extending down his left leg here. With you, it's a little bit more, angle here, and then a little bit more of an angle here up your back. Not quite a straight line. So when we talk about the stable axis piece, what we're really talking about is, that hinging door that closes. Well, Grant has created that stable axis on the left side of his body, whereas you, as we mentioned, you've kind of pulled the hinges a little bit out of the door frame there. So a huge improvement from where you started, but we still have a little bit of ways to go in terms of really feeling like we've kept that 55 to 60% of our weight, on our front leg, on our lead leg, kept our weight, in this direction. And we also have a little bit of room to work on more side tilt at the top. I now want to roll the videos forward and compare the impact position of yours and Grant's. As Grant takes the club down, you'll notice his hips are pushing forward. He's pressing into the ground. He's preparing to jump. His lower center is moving toward the target. He's gotten his left knee an inch or two outside his left foot. That's kind of the checkpoint of how far he has to push his lower center of gravity forward. And then as the club moves on into impact, body continues to rotate. Beautiful forward-leaning shaft at impact, and there it is, a standard, 80, 85. He may even have more a percent of his body mass on his left foot at impact. But beautiful job by him, just really controlling his low point, keeping his arm straight, keeping a beautiful flat left wrist, and really hitting the ball with a lot of compression. One of the things you really improved upon was, your transition, of pushing your hips forward. You do a really nice job here of getting more into that squatting position. Keeping the width between your knees, really loading and compressing. This is one of the things you weren't doing very well at the beginning of the school, but you improved tremendously upon. So again, here's your impact position versus Grant's. The biggest thing I notice is that your spine seems to be slightly tilting back just a little bit, and that's here versus from Grant's belt buckle to his neck. So there's a little bit less of that angle from him, and the reason why is because he's releasing the flexion in his knees. He's jumping, whereas you still have quite a bit of lag or quite a bit of load in in your knees here, whereas his left knee is much more in a straighter condition because he's jumping. He's starting his jumps sooner than you are. So overall, really nice work. Huge improvement in your impact position. I'm going to go ahead and roll it forward to the frame after impact so you can see how Grant's arms remain straight. Club is released. And this is where you can see your arms are really close to your body. Your left wrist is sort of breaking down instead of facilitating a natural release. Compare the two. Beautiful straight right arm from Grant. Pushed his hips forward, tucked his tailbone, and has jumped off the ground. And you'll also notice something that he does extremely well is right here, banking of his right foot. And that's something that you didn't have at the beginning of the school, but you're really started to develop here toward the end because you were pushing your hips much more forward. So overall, really nice job with this. Now I want to take a look quickly at your swings down the line. Video on the left is before and video on the right is after. And this is the biggest change that I saw in your golf swing during the course of the golf school. You had a big rerouting move where you took the club sort of straight back down the target line. Left arm was outside the stance line. You got the club, you lifted your arms off your body at the top, and then you had this huge sort of rerouting motion at the top of your golf swing. Well, you're a very good athlete, so you kind of learned to time this, but the problem was if you didn't time the reroute perfectly, the club would get a little bit too inside. Sometimes you would get stuck. You'd be coming too far from the inside, causing you to have to sort of flip your hands at the last minute to rescue the shot. Your misses with this were straight pushes and overdraws. So that was one of the things that we really worked on, was getting your left arm in more on the backswing. And you can notice here, even as you take the club back, when your left arm is parallel to the ground at position 3, the club head is completely outside of your hands here. But on the video on the right, you'll notice that we worked on this and we talked about how we were going to do this. Was we were going to get the left arm more in this direction, sort of 30 degrees inside the stance line. That's why we put the yellow stick down here on the ground, and you did a much better job of getting the club, or getting your left arm in on the backswing, and this negated the need to have to sort of reroute at the top. We were in a much more repeatable position. Notice how the left arm works in much better, and here at P3, when the left arm is parallel to the ground, the club head is now inside our hands, getting you in a really solid position at the top. And still have a tiny bit of reroute move at the top, but not anywhere near as dramatic. You're going to have a much more repeatable swing here. The other thing that I really liked was, we'll compare the top of the backswing positions now, and you should see a significant difference in, this golfer on the left is sort of just lifting his arms off his body. We talked about the tees. The tees would definitely fall out from under your arms, but you're releasing the flex in your right knee much better after instruction. And take a look at how your hips are turning. Really turning on that sharp, slanted angle that we talked about. Much better here. Also a really good shoulder plane, left shoulder working down, and a beautiful left arm plane matching your shoulder plane here. So overall, really nice job with those changes, where as you can see on the left, we weren't turning the shoulders as steeply, and we were lifting the arms a little bit more, so the arm plane and shoulder plane didn't quite match up. And overall, huge change here. Impact positions on these two video comparisons are still dramatically different. Video on the left, the golfer isn't pushing his hips forward, he's just more spinning. You can see there's no linear motion, spinning path going to the left, whereas the golfer on the right, he's got his weight forward and the handle forward, and he's pushing forward. So we're hitting out, way more out at the ball. And that's why you were able to draw it with such ease toward the end of the golf school. So, really nice job overall, Bobby. Next pieces for you are really going to be able to learn to jump off the ground, tuck your tailbone, and sort of extend your spine in the follow through, so that we can maintain those straight arms and flat left wrist through impact. Great job with the golf school. If you have any questions,